Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We'll be learning today Mirz Hashem Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. We're continuing to learn Hilchos CholHamoed, and we pick up today on Yud Amud Beis in the midst of Siman Tov Kuf Lamed Tes, 2 lines from the bottom on Yud Amud Beis with Siv Vav. Says the Mechaber, and again just to remind ourselves, we're speaking about the prohibition of conducting business on CholHamoed. And we've been speaking about different cases where it's permissible to either conduct business or to do something akin to conducting business that you might have thought was forbidden but is not. So let's pick up on the Mechaber here in Sivav. Mitzia, something that you found, a found item. Aser l'triach u'lechapes aleha. You're not allowed to be matriach, you're not allowed to exert yourself and go search for a mitzia. What does that mean, to search for something? So the Mechaber gives an example. Kigain, for example, Nahar, a river, shehetzif dogim al sefasai. Let's say there was a big rain, and the river overflowed out of its banks. And you heard that when the river overflowed, a lot of fish came up together with the overflow of the water. And then when the water rushed back into the river itself, when the water had gone out over its banks, and now the water went back, and a lot of fish got trapped. I actually just saw that. After a recent storm over here, I went with my children to the beach here on Staten Island, and there had been a storm surge, and then the beach was littered with dead fish, because fish get thrown up on the beach together with the surge, and then when the water goes back, the fish get trapped. So you heard that there are fish that got swept out of the river, and that's free fish. You could go collect fish. So the halacha is that on CholHamoed you're not allowed to do this. If the river pushed out fish onto its banks, you're not allowed to go collect them. That's a tircha. It's exertion. You have to go out there and go collecting fish. You're not allowed to do that kedei lekavsham, in order to salt them and preserve them for use after Yom Tov. Unless it's going to be something that you may possibly eat during Yom Tov, then you could call it a tzarech Yom Tov. If you find a nice, good, juicy fish, maybe you'll prepare it right away for Yom Tov. So then it would be a tzarech Yom Tov, then it would be mutter. But if you hear that there's free fish on the riverbanks, so you want to go down there and collect fish so you could salt them and preserve them for after Yom Tov, that's a tircha that you're not allowed to do on CholHamoed. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut and chavdalit, mitzia aser, af shelo yimtza isam la'achar hamoed. And this is forbidden even though these fish aren't going to be available anymore after CholHamoed. Now the Chofetz Chaim is going to bring up an interesting question over here. The Chofetz Chaim is bothered. Why isn't this similar to the halacha that we learned yesterday in Sif Hey? Yesterday in Sif Hey we learned, let's say a caravan or a ship with merchandise, they came in, and you have an opportunity now to buy certain merchandise that you're not going to be able to get after Yom Tov. So then in Sif Hey, we said, mutter liknois v'limkar. If it's something that's not available, if it's something that's available now and it's not going to be available after Yom Tov, then we said you're allowed to go buy it. So the same thing is true over here. These free fish that got coughed up onto the riverbank, they're all going to be taken by the time Yom Tov is over. So you have a unique opportunity to get that free fish now. Why isn't it mutter to be matriach and take advantage of that? So the Chofetz Chaim explains very beautifully the difference between these cases. Says the Mishnah Berurah, "V'laydami l'shayara she'enu mitzuya t'sharinan le'el mekachu memkar mishum revacha." This is not similar. He brings down the halach of Sif Daled, not the halach of Sif Hey. He says this is not similar to what we learned. Why Sif Daled? I think that's a mistake. It should say Sif Hey. My Mishnah Berurah says Sif Daled. It should be Sif Hey. This is not similar to the heter that we learned about in Sif Hey, where we said if the caravan is here now and they're going to be leaving before Yom Tov is over, you're allowed to go ahead and buy and sell, even if it's not CholHamoed, even if you're buying something so that you could sell it for a profit after Yom Tov. The Shani Mekachu Memkar, because business, Mekachu Memkar, is different. This is a person's livelihood. A person who buys and sells items, this is his parnasa for the year. And he always has in his mind, how could he make more money for his livelihood to support himself and his family? Hilkach choshev pseida. In that case, that's considered a davar ha'avod. If somebody would be a businessman and his business is that he buys and he sells fish, so that's his parnasa. He relies on the income of his parnasa to support himself and support his family. And part of doing business for a parnasa is that you have to be able to take advantage of good deals that come along whenever they come along. That's part of your parnasa. So if a good deal comes along and a businessman can't take advantage of that good deal, then the inability to take advantage of that deal is called a pseida. That's called a davar ha'avod. That's part of my parnasa. I'm losing out on a piece of my parnasa. That's a davar ha'avod. Masha ain't kain b'mitzia. But when you have something that's just a mitzia, duhurak revacha ba'alma, that's not something that you were counting on. You can't call that a pseida. The fact that the river came and coughed up fish onto the riverbanks, and now you have a unique opportunity to get free fish, you can't call that a pseida because that's not something that you were ever counting on. That's not something that you ever expected. It would be just 100% bechinam. It would be a 100% gift, so to speak, if you would get that. Masha'en Kain in business, the fact that a caravan came to town and now you have a unique opportunity to go ahead and buy at a good price so you could resell after Yom Tov and make a nice profit, that is part and parcel of business. That's something that you do have an expectation. As a businessman, you always have an expectation that good deals are going to come and you're going to take advantage of a good deal and you're going to buy low and you're going to sell high. That's all part and parcel of business. So if I tell you you can't take advantage of a good business opportunity, that's a pseida. But something like fish on the riverbanks, a mitzia, that's something which is just, you never had any expectation. So we're not going to call that a pseida, a loss if you can't take advantage of it. You never had an expectation to be able to get such a thing. So that's not a davar ha'avod, and that's not mutter. Now we go to Siv Zayin, the last few words here on Yud Amud Beis. Hamalve es chaveroi, if somebody lends money to his friend on Yom Tov, so on CholHamoed, I'm sorry, not Yom Tov proper, not allowed to lend money on Yom Tov proper. Somebody lends money to his friend on CholHamoed, al chayfetz, and the collateral for the loan is some type of object, oy al schera, or on merchandise. So the borrower is putting up merchandise as a collateral. Al tanai, and the terms of the loan are she'im lo yipar alai l'sof shmoina yamim, that if the borrower does not pay back the lender within 8 days, she'yehe kanui loi, then the object which is the collateral will become acquired by the lender. Yesh matirim, there are those authorities that say that this is mutter, the yesh oisrim, and there are those poskim that say that this is aser. Let's just make sure we get the scenario very clear over here. Ruvain is lending Shimon $1,000 on CholHamoed. Shimon is putting up a computer system as collateral. And the terms of the deal are, if within 8 days the lender, Shimon, doesn't pay Ruvain back, then the computer system will now belong to Ruvain. Now the loan is being made on CholHamoed. So now the question is, how do we look at this? Ruvain is handing money to Shimon on CholHamoed. If Shimon doesn't pay Ruvain back, then ultimately that computer system is going to belong to Ruvain. On the one hand, we might be tempted to look at this and say that this is aser, because it looks at least like Ruvain is paying Shimon on CholHamoed to acquire a computer system. So that would be doing business on CholHamoed. On the other hand, there's a very solid reason to say that this is mutter. Because yes, Ruvain is giving the money to Shimon on CholHamoed, but the loan comes due after Yom Tov. And if Shimon fails to repay Ruvain, that's not going to happen until after Yom Tov. So when is Ruvain going to be kinda the computer system? When is he going to acquire the computer system? He's actually only going to acquire it after Yom Tov, not on CholHamoed. So in what way did Ruvain do business on CholHamoed? He didn't acquire anything on CholHamoed. And not only that, if Shimon ultimately does pay Ruvain back, then Ruvain is never going to acquire the computer system. So first of all, there's a chance that Ruvain will never acquire the computer system. And second of all, even if he does acquire it, he's not going to acquire it until after Yom Tov. So that's a very strong reason to say that this is mutter. So here we have a machlokes hapaiskim. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. The terms are that the computer system will become acquired by Ruvain if Shimon doesn't pay back the loan. What the Mechaber wants to say is, after the terms of the loan, that's when Ruvain is going to acquire the computer system. In the case of the Mechaber, that's after 8 days. There are those paiskim that say this is mutter. Because these paiskim say this is not a business transaction. Ela halva. All it is a loan. Ruvain is lending Shimon money on CholHamoed. There's nothing wrong with lending somebody money on CholHamoed. Ve'ikar akniya, and if Ruvain ends up acquiring the computer system, that's only going to happen 8 days later after Yom Tov. It's certainly not going to happen on CholHamoed. On the other hand, there are poskim who forbid this. Why? Because they say, if you would say that this is mutter, Yatiru kol mekachu memkar sheba'olam, all business would become mutter, v'ya'arimu, and people will make a trick, shelo yiyah mekachal ela achar hamoed, and they'll wink, and they'll say, don't worry, you're not really acquiring what you're buying until after Yom Tov, and until after Yom Tov is over, so during CholHamoed this will only be a loan. So you want to go buy a new coat, the clothing store will be open, and you'll go to the clothing store, and the guy will give you a coat, and you'll give him $200, and everybody will wink and say, "Now I'm not being kind of the coat now. I'm not really acquiring the coat now. I'm lending you $200. You're giving me a coat. The coat is only a collateral. If you don't pay me back the $200 after Yom Tov, then the coat will become mine. And by the way, see you, we'll never talk to each other again. Just remember, wink, wink, that's the terms of the sale. Did I say sale? I didn't mean sale. It's not really a sale. It's just a halva. So based on this, you could end up being matir all business using this kind of trick. So these poskim say we can't make this kind of transaction mutter, because if we do, the whole isser of doing business on CholHamoed will go out the window. And the truth is, this reminds me of the famous psak of the Rishiva Zatzal of Rav Moshe, where Rav Moshe was not very happy with Shabbos clocks on Shabbos, certainly with things that are av shemilsa, certainly with things that made noise, like air conditioners. He wasn't happy with the use of Shabbos clocks, because he said if we're going to start using Shabbos clocks like this, then ultimately automation is going to go to the extent where somebody can own a factory and he could have his entire factory running on Shabbos. Everything will be fully automated, and then that's going to be the end of Shabbos. The factories are going to be running. Everything is going to be running. Matter of fact, I'll tell you something interesting. I made a bar mitzvah back in what? In 1998, 2008. I'm thinking 2011. I made a bar mitzvah in middle of the summer, and there was a terrible, terrible heat wave. I remember the bar mitzvah was a Shabbos bar mitzvah, and after the Friday night Suda, and after sitting around and schmoozing after the Friday night Suda, the Suda was in the shul. My wife and I were walking back from the shul to our house after midnight, and it was 98 degrees outside after midnight. That's how hot it was. And my Rebbe, Reb Ruvain Zalzayin Gezund, was at the bar mitzvah. He was with us for Shabbos. and he told me Shabbos day that he remembered, he didn't tell me which year it was, he remembered when he was younger, he was still single, he was staying by Reb David, Zechet Tzadik Levracha. Reb David that back then was living in Seagate, and there was a terrible, terrible heat wave, and they called the Rishiva Zatzal, and they asked the Rishiva Zatzal if they could leave an electric fan on for Shabbos. And the Rishiva Zatzal said no. He said a fan is avsha milsa, people could hear the noise of the fan, and back then people were so poor and electricity was so expensive that Rav Moshe said nobody is going to believe that you left a fan on for the entire Shabbos. So there's a maris ayin, people are going to be chayshish that you turned on the fan on Shabbos, and therefore you can't have the fan on Shabbos. And you didn't want to be matir a Shabbos clock either. So they couldn't have a fan on Shabbos. Rabbi Berurah told me there was no way to cool down. He said during the day, during the heat of the afternoon, Shabbos afternoon, he thought that maybe if he goes outside and he lays down on the stone step of the stoop, he thought the stone might be cool. So he laid down on the stone, and then he found out what it means, a brick oven. He said the stone was so hot, it absorbed so much heat that when he laid down on it, he thought he was going to burn himself. So much for getting cooled off by the stone. It was quite the opposite. So in any case, here we have this machlokes hapaiskim. The matirim say that there's no business deal taking place over here. The transaction is a loan, and if anything is going to be acquired, it's not going to be acquired until after Yom Tov. The oisrim say if we're going to allow this, then all business is going to become mutar on CholHamoed. Okay, now we go to Sif Ches. Oived koichavim umazalois, basically non-Jews, shapara li Yisrael yayin b'choivai, who they have a debt to a Yid, and they come on CholHamoed, and they want to pay back their debt either with wine or with some other type of schira. So they're not paying back cash, they're paying back with merchandise. So again, it looks a little bit like a business transaction because you're receiving merchandise on CholHamoed in repayment of something. So again, it looks like a business transaction. Yet the Mechaber says, if a non-Jew pays back a debt to a Yid using wine or some other type of merchandise, mutter lekablo mimenu, the Yid is allowed to accept this repayment from the non-Jew. Why? The kematzil miyadoi dami, because it's as if he's saving his money from the clutches of the non-Jew. In English, this is called a davar avud. This is mutter because it's a davar avud. Says the Mishnah Berurah, is cotton chavches. Mutter lekablo mimenu, tu bechlal davar avidim lo yekabel achshav. Because if he doesn't accept the repayment when the non-Jew is offering it to him, you never know if he's going to get it. This, of course, harkens back to a day and time when the courts had no interest in enforcing laws on behalf of a Jew, so a Jew very often had no recourse. If a non-Jew would simply refuse to pay the Jew back, then the money was lost. There was no way he was going to get it. So if the non-Jew is coming and offering repayment, you have to take it now, even though it's CholHamoed, because it's a davar of. Now we go to Sif Tes. And here again, we have a complicated Sif. And I have to tell you, by the way, that I personally feel that this Siman is one of the most difficult Simanim that we have learned since we started learning Mishnah Berurah together. I'm trying to keep it on a very simple level. I'm trying to give it over in a clear, simple way. I hope I'm being matzliach. I hope I'm successful. But this is an incredibly difficult Siman. Says the Mechaber here in Sif Tes. Mi shetzarech liknois yayin be'es habotzir letzarech shtias kol hashana. Literally, somebody who needs to purchase wine during the time of the wine harvest. And that's when the wine is available at a decent price. So this person has a need now to go buy wine, and this is his wine for the entire year. He's buying now wine or grapes that he's going to use for wine for Kiddush for the whole year. He buys it all in one shot when the price is good during the time of the harvest. And if he doesn't make the purchase now on CholHamoed, if he waits until Yom Tov is over, lo yimtza k'moshe moitziata, he's not going to find grapes or grape juice or wine to purchase the way he could purchase it now. Which the Mishnah Berurah tells us, what does that mean? Take a look in Ois Kat L'Chav Tes. Lo yimtza k'moishe moitze ata. He's not going to find it like he can find it now. Ritzon Eloimar, what the Mechaber means to say by that is, Shelo yimtza kol kach bezoil. You're not going to find it at a cheap price, k'moishe moitze ata, the way you could find it now. So again, right now it's CholHamoed Yom Tov, and right now it's the harvest time. And right now, I could buy my grapes, my grape juice, my wine for my needs for drinking, not for business. For my needs for drinking, I can buy it all now for the whole year at a good price. And if I wait until after Yom Tov, I'm not getting that price. For some reason, what this reminds me of right away is years ago, I lived for a very short time. We lived in Passaic, and my boiler was an oil-fired boiler. And I had an underground 1,000-gallon oil tank. And I would buy all of my heating oil July. And I would fill up my 1,000-gallon tank. And that was it for the entire winter. I had all my oil for the entire winter. And in July, heating oil is cheap. So I bought all my oil for the whole year in July when it was cheap. You wait till October, the prices are way up. So over here, this guy is buying all of his grapes, grape juice, wine for the whole year for consumption for him and his family at the Shas HaBotzer at the time of the harvest that fell out on CholHamoed, and he gets a cheap price. So says the Mechaber, I'm just going to read it again for the beginning of Siftes. He wants to buy all of his wine. He needs to buy all of his wine now during CholHamoed, during the harvest time, for his consumption for the whole year. And if he doesn't buy it now, if he waits till after Yom Tov, he's not going to get a good price like he could get now. Says the Mechaber, Davar ha'avidhu. This is considered a Davar ha'avid, and it's a mutter for him to buy the wine. Not only is it mutter for him to buy the wine, continues the Mechaber, mutter liknois ulasakein hachaviyos ulazafsan. He could also buy barrels to put the wine in. He could also fix and repair barrels. Like we said earlier, he could put the metal bands around the barrels, which is definitely malacha. He's allowed to do that. Ulazaftan. And he could smear the barrels and seal them. All of these are malachas. He's allowed to do all of this. Why? Because the purchasing of the wine is mutter because it's a davar ha'avid. Once the purchasing of the wine is mutter because it's a davar ha'avid, I need barrels to put the wine in. If I don't have barrels, the wine is going to go bad. So now I could do malacha to make the barrels, because that's also a davar ha'avid. Ubelvad, the Mechaber says, shalo yechavin malachtei b'moed. However, and I assume with this phrase, the Mechaber is referring to the making of the barrels. Don't intentionally leave that malacha for CholHamoed. So for example, if before Yom Tov you already know that you're going to end up buying your grapes, grape juice, and wine during CholHamoed because that's when it's going to be available at a good price, and you know that it's mutter because of Siftes over here in Shulchan Aruch, so already 2 weeks before Yom Tov, you knew that you're going to buy this material on CholHamoed, so then don't leave the making of the barrels for CholHamoed, make the barrels before CholHamoed. So don't intentionally leave the malacha to be done for CholHamoed. So this, the Mechaber says, is mutter. Let's take a look in the Mishnah Berurah first, a nice cut and limud. Says the Mishnah Berurah, l'saken achavius, you're allowed to make the barrels. Afagav the tikun achavius have a malacha gemura, even though making the barrels and smearing the barrels and everything else is 100% malacha, it's tikun maneh, so that's zichar malacha. Mikamakam kevad the mutter liknais. Since it's permissible for you to buy the wine, mutter gam ken l'saken akelim atzvichim lazeh. So then you could also make the barrels that you need to store the wine in. So this, the Mechaber says, is mutter. Now, why is this mutter? This is mutter because you need wine for the whole year. You got to make Kiddush every Friday night. You got to make Kiddush on Yom Tov. Maybe you drink wine during the week. This is food. This is stuff that you need for you and your family for consumption. You know that you're going to buy this material. And you have a budget. You have a set amount of money, and you have things that you must buy for you and your family. Wine is one of the things you need to buy for you and your family. If you have the chance now to get it at a cheap price, then if you don't take advantage of that, that's a davar avud. I lost that opportunity, I lost money. So that's a davar avud, and this is mutter. But, continues the Mechaber, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down, right by the Ois Cotton Lamed Aleph for the Mishnah Berurah. Avol, however, Yoiser Mikidei Tzarich Shtiyasai Lo Yikne. You're not allowed to buy more than what you're going to drink this year. What you're allowed to buy is, yes, it's a davar avud if you don't take advantage of the good price. You need wine, you have to buy wine for consumption for you and your family. If you don't take advantage of the good price, that's a davar avud. So whatever you need to drink, you're allowed to buy. But if you're buying more than what you need to drink, why are you buying it? If you have what you need to drink for this year, so what are you worrying about? Next year? Next year you'll buy by next year's harvest. So why are you buying more? Oh, you're buying more because you want to do business. Maybe you're buying more because you figure, I'm going to get it at a good price. There's going to be somebody in the neighborhood who didn't buy wine, and I'll sell them wine at a good price. Wait a second. Now you're buying for business. Now you're doing a purchase on CholHamoed for business purposes to make profit. That you're not allowed to do. There's no heter to do that. And that's not considered a davar avud. Let's remember, as long as it's within the normal price ranges, that's not called taking advantage. That's not called a davar avud. That's called that you want to make a purchase for business purposes in order to make a profit. That's harvacha. You're not allowed to purchase on CholHamoed for business, for schera, just to make a normal harvacha. You're not allowed to do that. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says, in Ois Cotton Lamed Aleph, if you want to buy more than what you're going to drink, Pirush, the explanation of this is L'chol Hashana, if you're buying more than the wine that you're going to drink this year, V'lachein lo yikneh. That's why you're not allowed to buy it, because you're not buying it to drink. You're not buying it for consumption for you and your family. If you're buying it for your drinking needs, so you already have enough for this year. What are you doing? You're buying for next year. Buy it at next year's harvest. So now it's clear that the reason you're buying that extra wine is because you want to do business with that extra wine. So then you're doing purchases and sales for business purposes. We said you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to make purchases and sales on CholHamoed for business purposes. Only if it's really a davar avud, like we said in, let's say, Sif Hey. In Sif Hey, we said if you have a mamish once in a lifetime opportunity to buy schera at a crazy price, that then you're going to sell it later, that already is such an extreme case. We said that's a davar avud. But if it's like a normal thing, every year the harvest time comes, the wine is a little bit cheaper. So now you want to take advantage of that little bit cheaper, and you want to buy wine now to do business, to sell it? No, you're not allowed to do business on CholHamoed. But, says the Ramah now, Haga, v'imu davar she'enoi motzoi acher kach laharviach boi, muter. But if the price of the merchandise now is such that it's so low that if I buy this wine now, I'll be able to do business with it. But if I don't take advantage of this purchase opportunity now, I won't be able to do business with wine. Because after CholHamoed, the wine prices are going to be up to the extent that it won't be worthwhile for me to sell it anymore. I'm not going to have enough of a profit margin. So then it's a davar avud. In other words, sometimes the price differential could be that if I take advantage of it now, I'll be able to do business with wine after Yom Tov. Because I could get it at such a good price, I'll be able to sell it at a price that people will come and they'll buy it from me. But if I wait until after Yom Tov, then the price is going to move up, and the price is going to move up to the extent I won't be able to sell it anymore. It's not going to be kedai. I'm not going to be competitive. I'm not going to be able to sell it. In that case, it is a davar avud, because now I'm totally losing out on a business opportunity. It's not pshat, I'll have a little bit better profit margin. Sometimes I'm in the wine business anyway. I have a liquor store. I'm in the wine business. So all right, if I take advantage of this, I'll make a little bit more profit on this one item. That is not a davar avud. That's you want to make a good investment on CholHamoed. That's doing business on CholHamoed. That's usher. That's what the Mechaber was talking about. The Mechaber said you want to buy more than you need for drinking for your family. So that means you want to do business. You have a liquor store and you chop that you have an opportunity over here. If I buy the wine, I'll make another 25 cents a bottle. That's business. You're not allowed to do business on CholHamoed. But sometimes the price differential is so much that if I buy the wine now on CholHamoed, then I'll be able to sell it after Yom Tov. Then I'll be in business. Then I'll have a business opportunity. If I don't buy it now, I will not be able to sell wine. So then you're totally losing out on a business opportunity. That's already a davar of it. That seems to be, there's a lot of, if you want to take a look, there's a bir halacha here, that goes through this very much. There's different ways of learning pshat in this Ramah, because we have to balance this Ramah. What's the case of the Mechaber? What's the case of the Ramah? And we have to balance it all against the halacha that we learned in Sif Hey that said that you're allowed to take advantage of a business opportunity if the caravan or the ship is in town now and they're selling merchandise cheap. Then we said in Sif Hey, then you're allowed to go ahead and you're allowed to buy in order to do business. Why? Because that's already a davar ha'avod. The Mishnah Berurah back on Yud Amud Beis, Ois Kat and Yud Ches. If you could get a steal of a deal so that your mamish you'll be able to sell for such a greater profit, it'll be a revach meruba, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, that's a davar ha'avod, that's mutter. So over there in Sifei, that's mutter. But over here the Mechaber says if you're buying the wine, yoser mikdesh tiyasai, it's aser. And then the Ramah says that if it's not motzah after Yom Tov, it's mutter. So we have to balance these. So the balance that I'm giving you is the Mechaber is talking about if I need to buy for my family, I want to buy at a good price. I need wine. If I don't buy it now, I have to buy it after Yom Tov. I want to buy it at a good price. The Mechaber says, okay, buy it on CholHamoed, because if you don't, it's a davar ha'avod. You want to buy it to do business? No, you can't buy it to do business. What does the Mechaber mean? Not that it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I want to make a couple of dollars more profit. No, that you're not allowed to do. That's doing business on CholHamoed, that's aser. Comes along the Ramah, and the Ramah says, if it's a steal of a deal, and it's a steal of a deal to the extent that if you buy it now, you'll be able to do business with it. If you don't, you won't be able to do business with it. Then it's a davar ha'avod, and then you're even allowed to buy it for business. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah. Ois Kat and Lamed Beis. V'imhu davar she'enei matzoi. If it's something that's so, you push it, not going to find anything like this after CholHamoed. Ritzayin Eloymar, what the Ramah wants to say is, Shekniyas hayayin lo yiyamatzoi achar hamoed klal leharviach boi. You will not be able, look how I'm translating this. Ritzayin Eloymar, what the Ramah wants to say is, the Ramah's case is, Shekniyas hayayin lo yiyamatzoi achar hamoed klal leharviach boi. You will not be able to acquire wine after Yom Tov in order to do business and make a profit with it. The pricing now is such that if I buy it now, I'll be able to do business and I'll be able to make a profit. If I buy it after Yom Tov, I will not. In that case, it's mutter to buy the wine, even though you're buying the wine for business purposes. Because now it becomes like the Mechaber's halacha in Sif Hey by the caravan, where the caravan came to town and the prices are so cheap now that I must take out the opportunity. I must take advantage of the cheap prices. Otherwise, it's a davar ha'avod. It's gonna damage my parnasa. We're not talking about just making a small extra profit. We're talking about my ability to make parnasa or not. Aval kishayimtza. But if I will be able to buy wine after CholHamoed, after Yom Tov, and I will be able to do business with wine after Yom Tov, rak sheyeh yoser b'yoker, just it'll be more expensive, v'lo yuchal laharviach by kol kach, so my profit margin will be less, but I'm still going to do business, aser, then it's aser, because then you're only doing it for business purposes. You're only doing it to make a little bit extra profit. Business is aser at CholHamoed. V'yesh ben ha'achrayim, there are those achrayim that hold, if the wine is very cheap, v'hu revach meruba, and it's a large profit difference. Shachar HaMoed ein motzi klal revach kazeh mutter to dumya de shayara hanal. This shita, if you look in the Sharatzia, this is brought down from the Bach. The Bach is a little bit more makel. What I'm saying, the Ramah is saying is, the way I'm learning the Ramah and the first pshat brought down here in the Mishnah Berurah is, if I buy the wine now in CholHamoed, I'll be able to do business with wine after Yom Tov. If I don't buy it now, I won't be able to do business with wine after Yom Tov. Therefore, it's mutter because it's a davar of it. The Bach is makel one notch. He takes it down a notch less. And when he says, no, it doesn't have to be that your mom is not going to be able to do business with wine. You're going to do business with wine even if you buy the wine after Yom Tov. But the differential in your profit is tremendous. If I buy it after Yom Tov, I'll make a few cents on a bottle. If I buy it now, I'll push it and make a few dollars on a bottle. So that's also called a davar of it according to the Bach. Okay, now we go to Sif Yud. And this starts to become very negeya. And after learning Sif Yud Aleph, I think you're really going to start to question doing business on CholHamoed, even going shopping on CholHamoed, having stores open on CholHamoed. Says the Mechaber in Sif Yud, Moichrei Tavlin, spice dealers, a yarok, or vegetable produce dealers, the chol davar she'enoi miskayim, people that sell things that don't have a long shelf life. They don't last long. So when we speak about tavlin over here, about spices, we're not talking about the dried bottles of McCormick spices that we have in our pantry closets. We're talking about fresh herbs. Imagine, and I'm thinking right away of Shlomo Zalman, imagine fresh rosemary, fresh dill. We're talking about fresh spices that don't have a long shelf life. So moichrei tavlin, spice dealers, or yarok, or produce dealers, the chol davar she'enim miskayim, or people that sell things that don't last. Poischin, they can open their stores, umoichrim, and they could sell kedarkom in the normal fashion, the way they always do, befarhesia, and they could do this publicly on CholHamoed. Shakol yoidin shem l'tzarech hamoed, because everybody knows that whatever they're selling l'tzarech hamoed. If they're selling things that only last a day or two, so that means that the people that are coming and shopping in their stores are buying l'tzarech hamoed. You're allowed to buy food l'tzarech hamoed, and you're allowed to sell food l'tzarech hamoed. So if I have a vegetable store, my stuff doesn't last, my product doesn't last, and the people who are coming in to buy it, they're not buying it for 2 weeks from now. They're buying it for now, so that I can do business in the perfectly normal fashion. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Katan Lamed Gimel, Moichrei Tavlin o Yarok, v'achroinim iskimu, the achroinim agree, to hu adin moichrei besamim, people who sell besamim, different types of incense, dav shehu davar miskayim, even though that's something that does apparently have a long shelf life, kevin shehu nikr duhu l'tzarech hamoed. People bought besamim apparently l'tzarech hamoed. That's when they bought it. They bought it l'tzarech Yom Tov. Otherwise, they didn't buy besamim. V'im kain, kevin shepoischin l'tzarech Yisrael. If this store is a store that's open to serve the Jewish community, so then afilu ba nachri liknois mutalim koloi. Then even if a non-Jew comes, you're allowed to sell to him. Once you're allowed to open, and you're allowed to open because you're selling to the Yiddish community who buys besamim for Yom Tov, so then once you're open, you're open. Now you could sell to non-Jews as well. Okay, so here in Sif Yud, what did we establish? What we established in Sif Yud is, if your store is the type of store where it's obvious to all that the people that are coming into your store are buying things l'tzarech hamoed, then you could open in the perfectly normal way, you could carry on your business in the perfectly typical way, and you could do business on CholHamoed without a problem. Now let's go to Sif Yud Aleph. Moichrei peros, people who sell fruits, ksus, or clothing stores, the kalim, people who sell kalim, hardware, houseware stores. Moichrin bitzina l'tzarech hamoed. They could do business bitzina, discreetly, l'tzarech hamoed. Somebody needs a suit for Yom Tov. He ripped his suit. He needs a new suit for Yom Tov. It got cold. He needs a coat. Somebody needs pots and pans to cook for Yom Tov. Peros, some kind of fruits that generally last longer. fruits usually have a longer shelf life than vegetables. So in Siv Yud, the Mechaber spoke about vegetables. That doesn't have a long shelf life. In Yud Aleph, he's speaking about fruits that have a long shelf life. People might be buying them for after Yom Tov, but there are people that are buying it for Yom Tov as well. But in these cases of Sif Yud Aleph, it's not obvious that you're doing business with CholHamoed. Could be somebody's coming in and buying pots and pans for his kala that's getting married in 8 weeks or in 3 months. So we don't know why you're doing business. It's not obvious that you're doing business with CholHamoed. So you could open because people need you to be open with CholHamoed. But you have to carry on your business bitzina. What does that mean? How do you do it bitzina? Ketzad, asks the Mechaber. So the Mechaber tells you how. Im hoisa hachanus psucha lezavis. If your store opens to kind of like a discrete corner, it doesn't open up mamish onto the Rishus Harabim, oila mavui, or it opens up to a mavui she'enoi mafulish. For those of you who didn't just learn Erevin recently in Daf Yomi, so that means it opens up onto an alley that's closed off on the back end. What we would call in English a cul-de-sac. But either one of these two cases, we're talking about where the store opens to a quiet, not so public area, then Paisach Kedarkai, then you could open the store in the normal manner. But if the store is opened up mamish onto the Rishus Harabim, then you can't open in the typical manner. Then if you have 2 doors, Paisach Achas, open 1 door, then Noyal Achas, and keep 1 door locked. So people see that you're not open for business in the normal way. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Lamed Daled. Moichrei Peiros, people who sell fruits, the Elu Dvar Mamiskaimim Lachar HaMoed, the case is brought down by the Mechaber, fruits, clothing, housewares. These are things that last until after Yom Tov. And therefore, it's not obvious to everybody that you're opened only CholHamoed for the needs of Yom Tov. So people are going to think that you're doing business for after Yom Tov, and that people are coming and buying for after Yom Tov. Therefore, you have to only be opened in a discreet fashion. The Paiskim write, the Dafka Moichrem HaKavuim she'umanusa mekach kol hashana boitzina. The only time that you need to do this bitzina is you're a guy who has a hardware store and you're opened all year. So then you have to do it on CholHamoed bitzina. Somebody who has a cottage industry and everybody knows that he's only opened for the needs of Yom Tov, he doesn't have to do it discreetly. Everybody knows he only does business around Yom Tov time for the needs of Yom Tov. If the store opens up to a discrete area, like a corner, an isolated corner, or to an alleyway, an alleyway that's closed on the back, like I said, a cul-de-sac, if the alleyway is opened on both sides, then then it's a Rishus Harabim. The Mechaber said you open one door of a Noyal and you close the other door. That's only in these cases where you're selling items that could be used for Yom Tov. Aval shar dvarim. If you're selling other things that where there's no Yom Tov need at all, then even if you're doing it very discreetly, I'm not 100% sure the scenario that the Mishnah Berurah is describing over here. You're sitting bepesach hachanus. The storekeeper is sitting at the doorway to the store. V'hachanus skura. The door is closed. V'hadelas psucha, but the door is open. I'm not sure what that means. Asr. But it seems that he's saying even if you're doing it in a discreet way, it's still asr. Okay, I think we're going to stop over here. So we're ending off. We're going to pick up next week near the end of Sif Yud Aleph over here at the words Ve'erev Yom Tov Achron. Okay, a freilich and Chanukah, everyone. A freilich and Zois Chanukah. Zois Chanukah. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. We should be zeicha to the Or of Torah. The Or of Torah. Kiner mitzvah of Torah Or. The Or of Torah should be nispashet in Klal Yisrael. And in the schus of Torah, we should be zeicha to the true Chanukah Hamizbeach. We should be zeicha to the Bias Girl Tzedek B'mehera V'yameinu Amen.